And welcome. My name is Gregory Robb. I'm the COO here at Sierra Division. I'm joined today by my usual friend, colleague, CEO, and responsible for everything beautiful here at Sierra Division, Mr. Jacob Norris. Jacob, how are you today, sir?
Yeah, doing pretty good. How about you guys?
Doing all right. Doing actually pretty excited to meet with today our live Q&A, our special guest here, Victoria Lyons. How are you, Victoria?
Good. How is everyone?
Doing well, thank you. Hopefully, everybody else in the chat doing very, very well. So we were super excited for this one, as this is a step for us in a direction of a new area of art, that being technical artist. You being a senior in the field, you know obviously what you do, and so I'll let you speak to your credentials and talk to you a little bit about yourself.
Sure. You have a very professional radio voice here, so it's like, wow, it's so legitimate now. I don't have a proper radio voice.
You sound great. You're totally fine.
So yeah, hi everyone. I'm Victoria. I guess I'll cover a little bit of my background. So, like it was said, I am a technical artist, and I've been working in tech art for about 5-6-ish years now. I didn't actually start off in tech art. I did this weird little jump where I got a degree in game art and then became a gameplay programmer, and then somehow those two naturally collided and I ended up in tech art. So I started off kind of like a lot of people do at a smaller local studio when I was a student, doing more corporate VR, AR, and web AR, as well as mobile apps occasionally. Ended up jumping from there over to virtual production, where I was a technical artist on Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ant-Man Quantumania, Netflix's Avatar: The Last Airbender, not whatever's most recently coming out, but the first season. Rebel Moon, that Netflix did as well, and helped a little bit with a few other shows, but some smaller ones. And then I switched over to Singularity 6, where I was a senior technical artist on Palia. And then most recently, I was a senior tech artist at Splash Damage, working on Project Astrid. So, yeah, now I've recently kind of left to do purely freelance tech art and running kind of like my own thing. But yeah, that's my career so far in a nutshell.
Yeah, I feel like every time that we've chatted so far, somehow I learned something new about your background, and I'm like, oh, you do that also, and like, oh wow, you're doing that too. Okay, like the list keeps growing and expanding. So it's really amazing to hear. Yeah, like everything you've been a part of, and then like all the different varieties of work actually that you're doing as well.
The fun thing about tech art, it's the one of the two roles where you can kind of be a generalist and get to do a variety of things, and it still go all the way from indie studios up to AAA. Because I feel like in most roles, there's a lot that like only exist in AAA and get very specialized, or only exist in indie studios and are too generalized after that. Say tech art, tech design, I think get to be the two exceptions where we get to wear a lot of hats, and I think it's quite fun.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll start off the AMA and just ask, like, how do you like being now a freelance tech artist versus, I know it hasn't been maybe a super long time since you've been doing it, but versus being in a studio, and kind of how do you find the differences for yourself?
I find it really refreshing, actually. I think after being in large studios for a while, I think even if it wasn't tech art, you'd get this with most roles. You kind of start to be just like a very, very small piece of something much larger. And also, any work you're doing, although it's like you get to get very nitty gritty into a specialization, it ends up being like tons and tons of work for what is actually like a small piece of things. So it was fun. Like I got to delve into a lot of source code and very specific parts of the engine and Unreal, and making tools in very niche areas. But now that I'm doing freelance work, there's a lot more. Oh, here's a project. Okay, it's due in the next month, and I'm doing a huge chunk of it. Or like there's a smaller chance that something I'm going to work on is going to get thrown away, just because like with games, and with really large games in particular, they tend to do a lot of work that gets redone, and also there's just very, very long timelines on the projects. So it's nice. Short timeline projects I really appreciate right now.
Yeah, you set your own hours, I'm sure, and take the projects that sound interesting to you.
That too. I am, I think, getting to delve into a wider variety of industries than I have before, which has been nice.
And so you'd mentioned that you'd started out in game art and then made the transition to programming, right? What was it that kind of led to that? Was it just kind of like you ran into it and found interest, or was it out of necessity, or what was the reason?
I think I've kind of always been a little bit in the middle, and I think a lot of people in tech art actually tend to always just kind of switching back and forth between programming and art and then kind of coming back to tech art in the middle. What it was is when I was a teenager, I kind of knew already I wanted to go into game development. It kind of started with this weird obsession of actually really, really liking statistics and wanting to look at how Magic card costs were balanced, as well as LARP character stats. And I had a statistics instructor who was just like, by the way, there's actually like work in this. People make games and there's like actual mathematics behind this. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to study game development. The decision between whether I went to like a computer science program to study game development or whether I went to an art university to study game development was entirely just which one gave me more scholarship money that I'd end up in less debt in. And that ended up being an art university. But then once I went to intern somewhere, then it kind of, I think I started doing art task initially. And then there were just kind of some interesting problems where it's like, oh yeah, no, maybe it'd be fun to learn C#. So then interning while studying at art university, by the time I graduated, I decided to do this thing where in order to maximize my chances of breaking into the games industry was to just take tons and tons of job descriptions of all the roles I thought I could go into, tally up the number of times I saw each different like skill appeared, rank against my own skills, and then see which one I was likely to meet the most things on, and then also like trying to see how many people were applying for different roles. And it turns out, at least at that time, that my skills happened to match tech art, and it was also very unpopular. I decided to target that as the statistically best option, maybe. And then I ended up really liking it. But yeah, it was a little coincidental.
So you were doing tech art to pick your role in tech art, basically, like statistics
Kind of.
and mathematics and kind of like, yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
It sounds like it was
Well,
just
but
the right fit, just how technical and how mathematical you think and how you process. Yeah, I'm seeing what you're saying.
I like that. I think a lot of people, like, you study mathematics in school and then you go, hey, when am I ever going to use this? And then most of us never do get to use it. But going into tech art specifically, maybe not all areas of mathematics, but at least like geometry and trig and linear algebra and a little bit of calculus, like, oh yeah, I do get to actually use this stuff every day, and it's fun, and you get some weird problems that are like just gotta think of something for all the time. I've always really liked that.
So, like from the artist's side of things, that there's always different parts throughout the process of creating the artwork that are kind of gratifying. Of course, being able to post up like the portfolio work is a big one. But I'd be curious from like the tech art side, there's a different kind of product that you make when you're finished with it. So it'd be interesting to know, like, yeah, what throughout the process, like, kind of what gives you the most joy or is the most interesting for you while you're working on things.
I guess for me, I think varies like based off the person and their specialty, because tech art tends to be a fairly broad, like, I guess, job, and you have some people with completely different skill sets who are both considered under like the same job title. There's varying degrees of the art side to the engineering side of tech art, and once you get towards more of the art side, you are still making a lot of visual results. People who really, really specialize into shaders or into tech art specifically for UI or with VFX or lighting specific tech art, then I think a lot of those people still have the same, like, I am actually affecting the mood of an environment or something about the story and how we're conveying this space to the player. Once you get more towards, I guess, my end, which is generally like closer towards the engineering side of tech art, then I think it kind of becomes two things. Like, on one hand, everything you're doing is still contributing to the game or movie or whatever project, and that's nice. But then there's also, it feels a little like playing support in a team game a little bit. It's like, oh, I'm getting to make stuff that's for the players, but also because I'm making tools, I'm making stuff for the people who are directly around me. And it's kind of nice to be able to, like, I make a tool and then I hand it to someone and it really helps them out and they're able to like work a lot better, I guess, a lot closer to how they want to, or if like they had a particular vision in mind of how something should look and they just couldn't get it to look that way, and I found out a way to get it to kind of function close to what they wanted, then I don't know, it feels nice to be able to do things for other people on the same team. It's like very, I guess, yes, I'm gonna say support role if we're gonna make equivalents to game roles.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's really interesting, actually. Um, I mean, not from like a tech side of things, but I guess I can absolutely understand that while working with other artists. Just even if you're able to do anything that kind of helps your team to succeed, then that's always a really good feeling.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It's also weird. Go ahead. Sorry.
no, it's totally fine. I was just gonna make a dumb joke about how like I just imagined, finding the small like comma in your code that's messing it up is like, oh yeah, that's what I've been waiting for all day. Like, because yeah, I mean, I'm not really in that world enough to uh, be able to understand all the different aspects of it, and so hearing you talk about, yeah, what makes it interesting and what makes it fun. It's yeah, it's cool to be able to relate to a lot of that still.
I get to crack, like, I guess the one other aspect of why I just think is kind of funny. Um, you have full access to Unreal source code. You can add anything you want to it, no matter how dumb it is. There have been times like where I get to make artist tools, but also like make them a little bit goofy. Or like, oh, maybe they want like their editor be pink or a button to change the color here. maybe Maybe, like, I've made optimization tools in the past where, like, give you notifications to run certain processes on your level with, like, a little picture of Kirby cleaning up, and you could just throw anything on Unreal. You have full access. So, like, I do silly animations that shouldn't happen in editor buttons, and the fact that I get to kind of make useful things for my teammates, but also, like, we can just make it however we want because when you're working in tools, it's internal only. It's, I don't know. It's fun to think like, yeah, you're fully in control of Unreal. If you're patient enough, you can add anything you want to it.
That would be kind of fun to see some of that stuff. I know we didn't prepare you to show any of that off, but it
Yeah.
sounds really interesting.
Unfortunately, I haven't done too much tools related work outside of studios because generally when I'm making tools, it's, well, you're making them for a team. So I need to do some more like personal tool work out on the side that I just kind of throw out into the internet.
Yeah, I mean, I guess as freelance now, you could kind of even consider for yourself what most people are looking for, or like what would be interesting for a lot of people, and then kind of your team is now the rest of the world, and you're able to help like anyone.
I guess like a lot of the types of tools that you see like on the Unreal Marketplace or stuff would be a lot of what studios have tech artists often do internally. It's just they make them very bespoke into that company's needs. Uh, like I think what's the very popular one lately? I keep on saying is it called Dash in Unreal for like
Yeah, yeah,
for
Polygon
3D?
Flow Team, the Dash tool set.
Yeah. So much of that stuff was stuff like tech artists and tons of studios were making internally for the studio they were already in. Like some of those were tools like people currently need. And I think someone realized like, hey, studios frequently need these same types of tools over and over again. Let's just like make one tool set and make it available for everyone. And they did it, as far as I can tell. I haven't actually used it yet, but really well that a lot of artists like it. And it's kind of, it's it's nice to see the side of making tools that is able to face everybody, not just inside companies.
Yeah, we actually used the Dash tool set even for, so like at GDC we had some art postcards that we had handed out to people, and just able to show some of the work that we've done and things like that. And one of the postcards, because we didn't have anything nature or organic yet, we just took the Dash tool set and used some splines, and then made a river scene, and it was like 20 minutes. And then we're like, all right, that one's done. We got a nice like river postcard we can show, because it does like all the scattering and stuff around there too. So like just when those tools are made in a way that they're user friendly, and like the user interface is easy to grab them and take a look at them and get used to them, it it's so amazing how much it speeds up your workflow, and uh, it allows you to just create what's in your mind so much faster, without having to, yeah, manually like place each and every rock or place each and every little thing there. So just experiencing firsthand how powerful tech art can be and how much it can help in the production pipeline. That's one reason. I mean, just before we had this AMA, I made like a post that I think it's one of the roles that doesn't get enough credit or enough. Maybe there's not enough people who are able to kind of do this crossover between art and tech. That in my mind, it's like one of the roles that should be praised quite a lot more, and it would be cool to see more people working in that area.
I do actually think that the past few years in particular, I think it's shifted quite a bit, both in like definition of tech art and how much people know about it, and also how many people would like call themselves a tech artist and what types of specialties fall under that umbrella. Because like I gosh, I don't know. I'm just realizing this like is a whole different tangent, kind of, since you mentioned that. But I think so. Like a lot of people, when you ask them like, "Hey, what is tech art?" They say, "Okay, anything that's bridging the gap between art and tech, like art and engineering." Well, that is very, very specific to the tech of the time. Like that's like a really, really broad definition. And because of that, because like anything between those two just gets classified as tech art, the definition is always going to shift. Like, I don't know. For example, I think when I got into this, when I told people like, "Oh yeah, I'm in tech art," they would assume I meant rigging. Because for the longest time, those were kind of just considered the same role, and eventually someone went like, I guess enough studios separated off tech animation from tech art that became two separate things. But like even now when I say tech art, people go like, "Oh, so like shaders or VFX," or they think something along those lines. And I think the biggest trend has been because game engines keep on getting more complicated, as well as the software around them, and some of the editors that aren't necessarily even writing code, but like node-based editors or just so many settings within different programs, that there's a lot of things that are now considered tech art that aren't necessarily like what I do. Like, heck, I think like when I got my first job in tech art, our director, he had a very firm policy against like, "Oh yeah, a tech artist has to know either Python, C# or C++." Nowadays, I'm seeing tech artists, because there's so many like graph editors that are really complex by themselves, that don't actually know programming language and just know graph editors, but that's like so big to specialize in that like they need someone to do that and that alone. So it's getting like a good bit broader, and I think the definition is starting to slowly like merge more into regular art, more as creating regular art becomes more technical a little bit, and that's kind of interesting to see, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, like
But it's also
artists are almost getting pushed into the tech role a little bit, and yeah.
yeah, I'm also seeing it like a lot become like a lot more popular for like indie teams and student projects. It used to be if someone you said you're a tech artist, people went, "Oh, what's that?" And then now you could see a student game come out and there's 8 people on it, and 4 of them have tech artists beside their name in the credits. Or with indie projects, you get like a similar thing because there's so much more art going on inside of game engines.
That's really interesting to hear.
There's actually a
I don't know if
question
you're
that's
about.
very relevant to that. True story.
Yeah. Actually, it's probably a good time to start taking a few of them. I see them starting to pile up, so I'll let you take it away, Greg.
Well, no, it's very relevant to what you just said, Victoria, actually. And so Karina had asked or stated, and then asked a question to follow up, that they had noticed there were a lot of scripts that tech art needs to learn, a tech artist needs to learn to get into the game world. They are planning to learn Python just to improve their rigging. and want to learn C++ and G/HLSL after all. But they were curious to ask, do you feel like it's best to learn a lot of languages at once? Or is it more efficient? Is that more efficient, or would you recommend just trying to get good at one? Like, would you focus on one and then maybe move on to another, or do you think it's okay to kind of branch out and try different ones at the same time? What are your thoughts, and what would you recommend?
I think it depends on how much time you have. Like a person who has 5 hours of free time a day to commit to this versus one who has 30 minutes. I think ultimately the best approach is to just use the thing like for what you want to make. I think like I ended up like first language that I like really delved into where I was like, no, I really want to learn this was C++, but that's because I was working in Unreal, and the moment you learn C++, you can do anything you want. If I had been working in Unity, then C#. If I was really into rigging, it would have been Python. I'm actually not until the last 3 months have I been learning Python. I think before that, because there was enough work needed both in the Unreal side and standalone tools, I was just C++, C#. But it's kind of just a whatever the thing you're making calls for, that's the thing that's probably best to learn. I think like I guess you can go about just like trying to learn pick off a particular language, but it's nicer to have something to apply it to. At least in my opinion.
Do you find like any one of the languages to be more useful to learn first that would help you to start to learn some of the other languages after?
I do think C# is a nice kind of neutral ground. Of like Unity like works with it, and as well you can make a lot of standalone stuff. And then also if you're going to jump into C++, it's a little bit easier to jump from C# to C++ than it is to just jump straight into C++. That said, I kind of liked that I learned C++ first because it made it essentially starting with something lower level and then moving to stuff that's higher level. It makes it an easier jump of rather than like, oh wow, what is all this, like these new concepts I have to learn about. It's the reverse process of what are the things I think would normally be available that are no longer available, and I'm just kind of restricted in what I do. So and suddenly everything's faster than you think it's going to be. It's nice to go from the stuff that is very slow and tedious to stuff that is fast. Fast isn't like faster, right?
Yeah.
You can almost like feel it like snowball and start to speed up. Is that basically why? It's like you hit the problem, and then you see the problem, and then you find a solution to the problem. It's like
if you start with the one that's the toughest, then everything else becomes easier. It's like wait, what is the people calling it? Like starting their toughest task like in the morning or something, eating the frog or something. That's how I don't know. I like to approach, or how like when I first started, how I liked learning to like approach coding was just like, okay, let's start with like worst possible scenario where it's still going to be useful in day-to-day game development.
Even taking that to like other areas, learning guitar, I had been told that it's best to learn acoustic guitar first, because then playing the electric guitar after is going to be so much easier. Because like it's just with an acoustic guitar, if you get really high strings, you have to push it down super hard, and then your fingers become just like stones from using those strings like that. And so I guess it's the same concept. You start at like the most difficult level, and then everything else after that's a lot easier.
Like obviously, I think it depends on the person too, though, because some people, if you start with the most difficult one, then you'll think like, wow, this is too difficult, let me just give up.
True.
Like it's like having the reverse effect of what you want, right?
That's
why
true.
I was
It
impressed
depends
when
on
you
the
said
person.
it. You just like took it head on. It's just like, no, I start with the hardest thing. Go for it. That's impressive.
I think it's because it had to do with when I was graduating. Actually, they didn't teach us C++ in art university, but I was looking at what skills were required and what skills I thought would be like increase my chances of breaking into the game industry the most with, and like would have the least competition. And at the time, at least, I was like, wow, a lot of people want tech artists to know C++ if they're working in Unreal, as well as like blueprints kind of go hand in hand in Unreal. But there's not that many people who do that. There's not that many tech artists learning C++. And turns out if you do that as a tech artist, then you have very little competition, and it's also kind of fun. So.
Good advice.
Solid.
Yeah.
Yep. So Eric is the next one. And so Eric had reached out and said that he's making a mobile game in Unity with a small open world map. What advice would you give in terms of techniques to ensure that the terrain and dressing is optimized? Should he use Unity terrain sculpting painting tools, or what would you recommend?
I'm only getting into like Unity projects very, very recently, so I'm not too familiar with terrain and Unity in particular, especially on mobile. But that said, with optimization in general, most of the time, if a game engine gives you something like, hey, this is our terrain system, and they've like put work into making that, that is more often than not the most efficient way to do that. Like in Unreal, for example, you would never try to make terrain, unless it was very, very, very small, you would never try to make an open world terrain not using terrain in Unreal for the most part, or, okay, fine, voxel plugin. But for the most part, like that's the most efficient way to do it. So yeah, use the built-in tools to is like the most that you can. And then after that, with optimization, I think it's important to jump into like kind of basic profiling, because sometimes you'll see like checklists out there of like, oh yeah, do this is optimized, do this isn't optimized. Oh, sorry, don't do this isn't optimized. But when it comes to a lot of things, like there's you can lose a lot of time optimizing stuff in the wrong area. Like for example, say your frame's actually being very, very like taking a long time because something's really slow on your CPU in your gameplay logic or your animations or something, and you're focusing on optimizing your shaders or like reducing your textures you're using. That's not going to have any effect. So if you can get into profiling a little bit, the tools are kind of like have an annoying learning curve at first, but then that kind of opens up being able to say what exactly is it that is causing problems. With open worlds in particular, though, I'm not sure how it is in Unity, but I think the first kind of barrier people tend to run into is not with what's being rendered at the moment and like particular shaders or models or something, but instead things being loaded that aren't supposed to be loaded. In Unity, it's you have to do a little bit slightly more bespoke things than you would in Unreal, but making sure that you're breaking things up into scenes, adding them additively, using, what is it called in Unity? Addressables to make sure you're only loading the stuff that you need to. And I'm not actually sure how it works in Unity, but tracking down like your hard reference chains to see if stuff that's, even if it's not actually going to the game, is getting loaded in, that's not getting loaded in. Because that's like, especially with mobile where you have very, very little memory and open worlds, like usually the first thing you run into.
Kind of on a similar note, I guess, but now moving over to Unreal Engine, Hunter Hazen had a question. When using Lumen and Nanite, are there any optimization tips and tricks that help when trying to optimize for Xbox Series S? And then it goes on to say Lumen and Nanite are great for the current gen consoles. He's just wondering if you've had any experience trying to bridge the performance gap, since Xbox is still very keen on having titles launch on the Series S.
Worked on a game with Nanite on Xbox in particular, but I guess just with Nanite in general, it is pretty restrictive. I think Nanite's done some great things for games graphics, and it's also done some terrible things. In particular, the biggest things you run into is one, potentially because you can have tons and tons of triangles, you can also end up with artists making assets bigger than they normally would have, and then just things loading in memory and in VRAM, and that can pretty quickly end up being a major concern. Luckily, there are settings on like if you open up your mesh in within your settings to your mesh, things you can do to reduce the size of a like the actual nanite asset is going to be. On top of that, there's just some general good guidelines for working with the nanite. Like as much as possible, you want to make everything opaque, and as much as possible, making sure everything's not moving. Like, don't have any world position offset at all if you can. What am I allowed to talk about? I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of NDAs. Okay, yeah, we're working on projects with Nanite. I think like the biggest concern usually ends up being like one asset's just getting too big because it can't support it, having to put restrictions there, and then after that, making sure we're using as few material instances as possible, making sure those are all coming from like similar master materials that are all opaque with no world position offset, and that also that anything that's translucent isn't nanite enabled and isn't like sorry yeah doesn't have nanite enabled, and like the meshes aren't built like they're going to have nanite enabled on them. So yeah, I think those are definitely the biggest immediate ones usually.
So if you're trying to create something with like world position offset, or at least that's the way I'm familiar with doing it for wind and foliage and things like that, um, in the new world of nanite, what's the best approach for making like assets with wind or movement to them?
A lot of games do now is I think you'll notice in the next few years actually, as more and more games start to be made with nanite, trees are going to get a lot less wiggly than they used to, or they're going to because they're at least going to start getting less wiggly far away. What a lot of games are doing is like switching out the mesh or the material or something at a distance, or disabling world position offset at a distance. So if you're having wind, it's only going to be up close, and they're going to be very, very careful with what they apply it to, because world position offset does, with nanite, can like this time can it takes to render can scale very, very quickly. If not that, I have seen like games that have nanite enabled, but for things like grass in particular or the trees, they'll go with a more traditional approach where they're keeping the polygons low, sticking with cards, and then making them wiggle as normal, but those aren't nanite assets.
Well, so this is just a personal question, and it's just because I get really interested in this type of stuff. Hopefully, I'm not detracting too much. Just stop me, Greg, if that's happening.
No, you're fine.
Uh, like how much of a performance hit would it be then if you have a static tree in the background and you put some type of like simple bubble around the static tree, and then you use that bubble to have a shader on it that has like a frame buffer, or it uses the image from the scene to then just have distortion on that to make it look like there's wind blowing on a background tree, versus just having the tree actually blowing. So, like, yeah, manipulating what's being shown versus then just manipulating the geometry itself.
I'd say it'd still usually be better if the tree in the background, the tree isn't actually the thing you're wiggling, but something else is wiggling. That's probably a lot better off, as long as that wiggling thing with world position offset does not have nanite enabled on it. Though, then again, with trees in particular, kind of like the golden standard, I think, for a lot of games is going with imposters in the background, in which case they don't have nanite in the first place.
Yeah, probably just better to have like a flipbook animation, like VFX style or something.
Yeah, I'm trying to think trees like moving off like really, really far in the distance. I haven't had to do that recently. I feel like, yeah, whatever you do, don't wiggle the actual dense mesh with nanite. You're good.
Yeah. It's probably just not super relevant, because then if it's off in the distance, only if it's a crazy hurricane will you even really be seeing it move a ton anyways. I just get focused on pointless problems that are interesting to solve a lot of times.
Pointless problem.
And it's like when I was working on Palia, we did have very bendy trees. Like there's wind on pretty much everything, but they kind of already, because that game went to Switch, like they decided like pretty early on, like, like no nanite, that's okay. Because I do think what I've seen a lot of lately is projects trying to use nanite because it's the newest rendering feature, not realizing how many things it restricts you in. Even if their style doesn't actually require it. Like there's a lot of things that could be totally done with fewer polygons and look totally the same, but because it's the new shiny thing, people wanting to use the new shiny thing, and then spending a lot of time with optimization later.
It's just a nice buzzword that makes it sound like they're like
Yeah.
got the latest tech going.
It feels weird. Like anytime I see one of those ArtStation posts, especially when Nanite and Lumen first came out, we're like, oh yeah, using Nanite. I was like, that's an optimization feature. You could still render a lot of triangles before. It would just take more time, why is this like a buzzword for art? It shouldn't affect the quality of like what you're able to do as an artist. I don't know, like when LODs came out, no one was going like, yeah, using LODs, look at this on your environments.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I guess I've known LODs to be around for a while, so that's pretty funny to hear that people were like, "Yeah, I got LODs in my project."
I think I think there was that era with normal maps for a while where people were like, wow, normal maps exist. Anyway, let me show it off. And like the normals are way too intense on this like whole generation of games right after that.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got a question from Katu. I hope I'm at least close to pronouncing that correctly. Currently, starting to learn tech art concepts, like doing blueprint widgets and simple procedural tools in UE. What are some must-have or good-to-know stuff to become an industry-ready tech artist? Since there are a lot of starting points like shaders, procedural tools, etc. So where would you recommend they start out? And what are like the must-have to break into the industry?
I mean, there's so many specialties. I think it depends on what you want. You can learn nothing but Houdini and still get into like tech art, or you can like learn nothing but shaders and still do that. I think it's good to do a combination of, or at least pick at least one like specialty that you really, really like, and then pick one specialty that's really, really needed that nobody likes, that you kind of like. So, like for example, I think I happen to really like making tools, but that tends to be pretty unpopular, so it's kind of like a nice choice of like keeping the skill set more safe. But also then like I don't know if there's like a certain skill that you like find really fun, but even if a lot of other people are trying to get into that like same specialty of tech art, then like keeping it balanced. If someone's already learning widget blueprints though, and then also doing procedural tools in UE, making sure to jump into editor widgets as well, I think is like a common request for tech artists. And working with editor blueprints is slightly different than working with runtime blueprints, so it's nice to be able to use both. Like, given those two skill sets, like the one I would say would probably like be a very natural transition and also help a lot with finding work.
Anything to add to that, Jacob?
No, I was just having a side conversation with someone in chat that basically saying, like, yeah, do it all, because then that way you can kind of decide what's the most interesting for you to focus on. And then with that in mind, I'm sure, like you said, Victoria, that you can technically focus on any one of the things, and I'm sure there's going to be a role out there for you somewhere. So once you've had a chance to experience the different aspects of what's interesting for you in tech art, then you can at least start to consider if maybe there's companies that are hiring for this type of role, and then if it's something that you'd want to focus more on and be able to become the specialist in that area.
I probably should have phrased that better. I guess this is assuming, like, before even approaching tech art, kind of the baseline is someone has a familiarity with 3D, like, art pipelines. Like, you've worked in Blender or Maya before, you've textured something, you're familiar with, like, different, like, types of texture maps, UVs, what's going into a model, maybe you've rigged something, animated something. You don't have to be a specialist in any of those, just kind of, like, familiarity with all of that. And then after that, usually people have like familiarity with at least one programming language. Doesn't really matter too much where you start, just depends on like what you're trying to make it for. And then after that, then like that's when you get into the more niche things, I think. But like some sort of programming experience, some sort of art experience, and then like kind of sampling around before deciding like this is the thing I'm gonna try to get a job in as a specialist.
Would you even recommend maybe just seeing what's on the Unreal Marketplace, or seeing like what types of tools people are offering, so that folks can kind of try out some of the end results, like the end products of what tech artists can do, so you can see like, oh, maybe this is something that I think I could help create tools like this for folks that would be fun to make on different teams and things like that.
This is often like a common pitfall, and I even see people run into it in studios, is if you're talking about tooling and automation, it's kind of like this weird cost-benefit analysis of making a tool or automating something takes a certain amount of time, and it's also going to save a certain amount of time, or prevent an error that if you had to go and fix that issue would take a lot of manual time, or expose something that wouldn't normally be exposed. So anytime when it comes to like, oh, should this tool be made, it's also a question of, will this tool get used? So there's tons and tons of things like where I've had people request tools, or like someone else says like, hey, we need this thing, and they don't realize how much time it takes to automate, and there's some things that like can help people a lot but are low-hanging fruits. I think the best approach to getting into making tools is to actually make something for a team, whether that's like a hobby project or maybe like not a weekend game jam, but a slightly longer game jam. Trying to set something up where it's like, hey, here's a team actually working on something. What is the thing that they need automated, or to have something set stuff up for them, or to prevent certain errors from being made? And that's a good place to start. And then there's also like kind of it feels nice to have something that people are actually making. And then also when it comes to like interviewing, I think that's something people look for in tech art, is being able to gauge, okay, just because you can automate it, should you automate it? And if so, how are you doing it? Because everything takes time, you know?
That's a good point. You don't want to spend like a month on a tool that's amazing, but then only one person uses it for a week and then they're done.
Yeah. There have been points where like I've been at studios where we like send out surveys and try to track what artists are spending like time on, and ask them like, how annoying do you find this? Which parts do you hate the most? And even if we have like one artist who hates this one particular problem, but they're the only person who works in that program, but they're all annoyed at the exact same thing, it's probably better for us to make the tool to fix the one thing that is annoying 20 people and like costing a lot more time for them than the one person who's very loud about the niche problem, because you only have so much time. You can't automate all of the development process.
That's a great thought process to have. I guess along those lines, from Jamie. So, what's something that you see artists do that makes you roll your eyes? Like one example for optimization, having 4K textures on a small prop, and like, yeah, what's something artists can do to stay on a tech artist's good side?
I don't. Okay, if you have to stay on a tech artist's good side, I think there's something wrong there, because it's I don't know. I don't like the mindset of like, oh man, why didn't you know that? That's like obvious or something. You should have known that. Because no, like there's like just a million very, very niche things that could potentially break stuff when it comes to making a game functional. So like there, especially working in virtual production, there are a lot of artists who came from a film background going into working in real-time stuff, and they are doing things like making a unique master material or duplicating the master material for every single object because they didn't know material instances existed. So like, how would they have known if nobody told them? And I think there's just a million small things like that. And there's also some things that are only like very, very small problems that I think people like, it gets overblown a little bit of how bad they are, because especially when it comes to optimization, it all depends on how much something is on the screen, how much of it is there, what else is going on at the same time. Like, yeah, translucent materials, anything that like switches Unreal to like forward rendering and it's causing overdraw. Or sorry, stages of forward rendering. It's not switching to forward rendering. Like everyone, like, yeah, let's reduce overdraw. Let's reduce the number of things that are translucent. But that doesn't mean like never have stuff that's translucent. And especially if we only have, I don't know, a cube and a sphere on screen, you can probably have like something translucent. So yeah, it's very context dependent. Sorry, there's not much that it would make me roll my eyes. I think it's a little silly.
Hopefully, at least the artists that are on the team would get some proper training in the first place to have the knowledge about workflow and material instances and good practices to have like not like massive translucent cards on areas that don't need it at all. And then for the most part, like tech artists are there to support the artists and like the engineers to be able to help each other. So hopefully then there shouldn't be a case where someone's going to be rolling their eyes at an artist, unless it's just you don't listen to people, and maybe you've made the same mistake like 5 or 10 times, and then eventually it's finally like, all right, come on, like don't make me do this
I
over
think
and over.
okay, I have had a few people call me over for Perforce issues every day, but I like fixing Perforce issues, so that's okay. But I usually kind of the rule of thumb I go with is if people aren't using a tool, it's not because of them, it's because the tool isn't helping them or something, or it wasn't clearly documented, or they didn't have a help button built in where they could find out how to use it, or the UI wasn't intuitive or something, or if someone's not wanting to use a particular workflow or is making mistakes that could blow up the game, I should have been the one to automate preventing that mistake from happening, and if I didn't, that's on me.
Even Blender, as an example, it kind of only became more popular once all these plugins started existing and once tech artists started making tools for them. So I have a question that might make people upset then. Is Blender actually so amazing, or is it the plugins that help to make it amazing and the ability to be open source like that?
I mean, I like Blender. Having had to learn Maya as my first modeling program when I was a student and then switching to Blender, I don't know if it was because I already knew one 3D modeling program that the second one was easier, but also it just felt a lot more intuitive to learn in the first place in general. Crashing less often is nice. Being able to just stack things together that modify your mesh and just have layers of them without destroying everything is very nice. I don't do too much freaking in animation, so I can't speak much to that. But I don't know, even without all the add-ons, I like it.
Yeah, and just that all to be said that I actually switched from Maya to Blender myself. But I just like to ask confrontational questions sometimes just to see how people feel about it.
I
Jacob
do
over here
wonder,
starting fights.
studios that still use Maya spend so much on Maya, and so many people aren't learning it just because it would take. Sorry, aren't learning Blender just because it takes more time to learn Blender, right? But because okay, sorry, there's two reasons some large studios are still on Maya. It's usually they have a lot of tools built into it, and they've just their tools programmers, tech artists have done a lot of work in it, and their whole pipeline's dependent on it. Or two, they just don't have the time to learn Blender or something else instead. But more and more, because so many things are switching to be in Engine instead of in your modeling program, we're seeing tools being done in Maya start to really disappear, with the exception of niche rigging things. So once that kind of starts to disappear and artists are allowed to use a larger variety of software, at some point I'm isn't it what if a studio just started paying their artist a little bit of time to learn Blender? It doesn't offset the cost of these extreme Maya licenses, but
Research days.
I don't know. Some of them still use them.
I mean, without speaking on specific studios, because I don't know how much they openly talk about it. I know so many game studios that have actually started considering moving over to Blender as their default one. Um, and yeah, we didn't have to get into Blender necessarily, but it's always a topic in the industry.
I think environment art especially has started to switch over. Characters and animation, not quite there yet, but I don't know, maybe in the next few years.
So from Finn, this is harkening back to maybe some of the comments you made about why you became a tech artist. Finn stated that he's an aspiring tech/environment artist himself, but the only reason they steer away from tech art is because they prefer working on the visual side of things, and rather than the deep dives into the tech art. They talked to someone recently, and they had said technical environment artist is more of a booming and growing position nowadays. Do you have any opinion on this? Do you think it's a good idea to market yourself as a technical environment artist, or do you think it's better to choose one of the two? And if you already have a statistics sheet worked out, would you please share it? No, that last part's me. But just because the comments you made before were I worked it down to an exact science. I knew where I was going to make myself most competitive, which is again, super cool. But please, if you don't mind, share some thoughts on that, because I think that's a great question from Ben.
The reason they make that differentiation between just the general tech artist or technical environment artist is a tech artist who focuses more on the character side or on the environment side? In particular, because animation tools and stuff for, I guess, animation, cinematics, sequencer can get very complex. Tech art tends to be broad enough. There ends up being like kind of two disciplines, even within engine, of characters, people who do environments. Like I, for example, usually in the past, like, actually, yeah, and my job title have been a technical environment artist, or like technical artist for environments or something. And that just means I'm not usually working in your animation blueprints, but your regular blueprints, and you're getting everything in the world to load at the right time and making tools for environment artists and such. So I haven't seen many roles like for technical environment art where you're still like actively building environments, maybe building environment materials. If that's something that like appeals to you, that would like you still normally fall into the realm of tech art. But yeah, I'd wonder if like there was an actual job description where someone called a tech environment artist and it was actually like an art role.
That's a good thought. Finn, I hope that answers your question. My friend, I popped into the chat just recently, or just a second ago, to wave and say hello. And so I'm going to move on to the next question. Finn, I hope that answered it. It's the best of our ability. Now, Nabir asked a question. When it comes to find work as a freelancer for the gaming industry, just to frame this all up, do you usually get contacted by studios for work? Do you reach out? Or is there a talent management studio through which you get work?
Only been a freelancer for 2 months now, like 2.5, plus a little bit of time when I was at one point waiting for a work visa. That said, pretty much all of my work has been through people I know or people I've met at conferences or game dev meetups. Because I think the best person to speak to your characters, people you've already worked with before. So and I know that's kind of like a bad answer, because if like someone's trying to get their foot in the door as a freelancer rather than as working through a studio, I think it's much easier once you've already have some experience. Because like, I don't know, heck, if I was hiring a concept artist, I already know a bunch of concept artists I've like worked with at different studios in the past, and I know who like could do a particular thing and would probably have certain people in mind before I even look at that. So I hate to say that though, because like I know that's probably not the
We had
fun
a
answer
similar
to hear, if
question
it's knowing people.
brought up before, where somebody had asked, like, that we were specifically talking about job security. And Jacob, maybe you might remember the specifics of who it was that said it. Maybe it was even you. Where we were talking about what the best job security was, and somebody said your community. They said your network. And I thought that was kind of a great answer, because it's like you get into these communities, you show off kind of what you do, whether it's ArtStation or other places. You get to develop what you're known for. And sometimes if somebody knows you, who's in the right person, has the right need, and they know you and they know you're good at it, seems to be a good way to get worked in.
Even Victoria, like you were saying earlier, doing some kind of group projects, especially as a tech artist, where kind of on a small team helping to make some kind of tools that's going to be relevant for what the people are doing. So even if there's not necessarily a specific like community or a specific challenge or something else, but reaching out to people and talking to them for collaborations and doing pieces together outside of what you would do in like a school situation, where they often do have like group projects and things like that. I know a lot of artists tend to want to create scenes on their own or work on their own kind of setups and projects and things like that. But if you see maybe something that could be an overlap with another artist that you really like their work, or if there's a project that already exists out there that you think is really interesting, then reaching out to the people and seeing if maybe there's some sort of collaboration you could start, and kind of building a little bit of that community and those connections, just for personal pieces, before getting straight into the work itself, might kind of help you to form that those relationships and that trust between people, where you get those recommendations to find the work.
Yeah, definitely that. I will say that, like, even though I think working in studios in the past has kind of helped me get my foot in the door in freelancing easily. I am now having to make an active effort because it's like, oh yeah, I'm used to like be forced into a setting where I was around developers, other developers all the time because like it was just my everyday job. Now, like right now, I am in rural Japan. There are not too many game developers around me, and I'm having to like okay, now if I'm going to do like switch to working by myself long term, I have to make an active effort to go to a certain number of like game dev meetups every month, or try to do game jams, or attend different events or conferences when I can, because otherwise I'm going to start to fall out of the loop on that.
I was just going to add on to what you're saying that like it's really surprising for sure. Greg and I had just attended GDC, and you know you go expecting that you're going to meet new people, but you never really quite know how it's going to happen, or how many people you might end up meeting, and it's definitely more difficult online. You know, there's sometimes opportunities or events or challenges where you get those times to meet folks, but when you're at a convention or at like an in-person meetup, especially, and you know even one person, like if that one person knows another person, and then that one person knows another person, and you just run into people while you're walking around on the show floor and talking to people that way, and like I think we ended up meeting like maybe 50 plus people that we had never known beforehand, just because like a friend invites you over to lunch, and then they're like, oh yeah, this is, you know, my other two friends, and then you're like, oh, nice to meet you, and then yeah, one of them says they're a tech artist, and it's like, oh, we actually are looking for a tech artist. It just happens to be right around that time. So um, even though it can be difficult maybe to try to plan around some of these events or travel to them. Luckily, it seems like there's quite a few events across the world at different times of the year, and so hopefully there's one nearby folks that are trying to connect with people, where they would have those kind of chance happenings of meeting other people around as they randomly bump into folks and kind of meet people through people.
We have a question now. Karina asked another one, and she volunteered to be the one that's going to ask the AI question. And so, do you think, Victoria, that AI is the new industry standard? Has it made your workflow easier, or do you prefer working without it?
That one's hard to say. Like, is that new industry? I don't think it's the new industry standard. Um, I, it's a few. I guess like a lot of people, it's hard. It's hard to say particular things without like stating any political views. But I think there's a world where using AI for creative purposes can do good. Getting to the point where we're making sure the people who actually have creative skills are still able to make money from that and not just be exploited. Still got a lot of work to do there. And until it gets to the point where like we can safely say that's like, hey, people are like not just being exploited and having their work stolen, and we're able to use this like in a moral way. I can't say I necessarily morally agree with at least like using for creative things. I do like a lot of programmers sometimes have to like use GPT or something where I'm like, I'm looking for this particular thing, and Unreal source code tends to be fairly poorly documented, and it's also like this kind of just massive bucket of code. So there's a lot of times where like, hey, let me try to do this particular thing, and you ask like a model how to do something, and it won't give you anything that's useful in terms of code, but it will at least tell you where to look for it that it would have been harder to find when Googling. So that's so far what I found it useful for, though given again I work in I think particularly stuff in Unreal, and particularly stuff that's editor focused as well, tends to be there's less data out there on the internet on it in the first place. So I think AI is less useful for my role than it maybe would be for roles for like regular gameplay programmers or something.
Just to mention it also, we want to be respectful of your time, and so I know it's a little bit late over there. Um, whenever it would technically already we're over the time that we had planned for the AMA. Only if you'd be open to it. There's only like maybe 2 more questions or so, but we can also have them answered in chat if you'd prefer.
No, sure. I am all good with sticking around. I made like a midnight convenience store coffee run here, so we're good.
Okay. Yeah, we really appreciate it. And for those that don't know, I think it's like 3 in the morning right now.
Yeah, it's 3
Or
in the morning.
yeah.
Thank you, Victoria. It was extremely helpful and very
Yeah.
kind to the community, so we can get as many people
I
involved.
I have had a lot of switching to freelancing. I've had a lot of meetings at weird hours. Especially like I'm normally based in the UK, and obviously there's a lot of people on the West Coast in the US, as well as different parts of Europe, and then sometimes in Japan. So it's been interesting.
It's amazing to be able to work remotely and travel around, but at the same time, your sleep schedule, as David mentioned in chat, is just all over the place. And I remember at NVIDIA, sometimes I would have interviews when I was in Asia at like 4 in the morning, and then I'd have to set an alarm at like 3 to wake up and then have a call and remember my questions. So yeah, it's definitely appreciated. I understand the struggle.
So if I'm going to ask maybe one more question, is that okay, Victoria, if you don't mind? And this is one that I think is probably most related to On Topic. And so they had mentioned, David had asked a question about whether or not you use digital NFC business cards to launch your website, or do you hand out like paper cards, Connect, if you're trying to like market yourself or reaching out. This may be also maybe a question, Jacob, to where you can help a little bit just because the limited time, Victoria, that you've had in freelance, but obviously welcome to fill in any answers that you may have. But they were curious about, do you just connect via LinkedIn, Instagram? What are the best ways that you've found to kind of get your name out there and to find opportunities?
I can tell you what's on my to-do list. I'm getting to it. So far, hold up. I'm going to actually open my board for this right now. So I keep like very, very strict to-do lists. I have set goals over the next few months, particularly for switching freelance, which included things like actually making a company website and putting as much flashy work on it as I possibly can. Getting to the point where like I had set up proper like through the company I'm working through for freelancing, like setting up. I think right now, at least to me, Blue Sky and LinkedIn seem to be the 2 most important ones for work. For some reason, I'm not on Blue Sky at all yet, but all the game devs love it, and I have to join it too. I do plan on getting physical business cards. I found there's been some times, especially in the last few months, where I've needed them and haven't. Like I was at a conference where I just had like a QR code that I made the background of my phone because I was trying to put together something just like in the train station on the way there. But then we were in a building that didn't have any sort of internet access, and it would have been really nice to give people a physical card with the QR code on it instead. So I'd like to still do that. And then for in terms of just being able to promote myself, I do have plans to like try to make sure I'm not publishing, but creating stuff that I can put out publicly outside of contract work, like public plugins or articles or tutorials and such, and making sure I'm going to a set list of game development related events. I have a whole list like planned out for the next 6 months of all the stuff near me. That is on my to-do list at the moment. I have not been freelancing for very long, so yeah, maybe this is actually better for you, Jacob.
No, you actually answered it exactly. Like your experience is basically spot on. So a QR code on your phone works great, but then if there's no internet access, a physical business card is a lifesaver. And with a little QR code on that, so people can easily get your information afterwards, is exactly what I tell people. So your minimal experience is already like up to exactly where I'm at. Yeah, which I found really useful.
If I may, a really good final question. This is also a way for you to kind of give some final thoughts, Victoria. And so Pratik had asked a question. What are some good resources and some good tech artists maybe to follow? And who do you recommend that they follow and learn from? And where can they learn?
It depends on the specialty you want to go into. So let me give a few recommendations here. In terms of I guess blueprints. I actually think Epic has like some really good courses they've made out there. It's actually, I think, like it's easier to learn blueprints from the gameplay side of things just because there's more resources for that than the editor side of things. So even if tech art, you're applying it on the editor side, you can go and follow like a tutorial series or something on making a game prototype, and that'll still help you with understanding blueprints for tech art. For things like shaders, yeah, specifically Ben Cloward, Prismatica Dev, and I can't pronounce that guy's last name. I'm sorry. Definitely those two. One that's tech art specific and specifically Unreal tech art is Tech Art Aid. I think some of that guy's videos are a little bit more on the advanced side, but for tech artists is a very, very popular resource. And then the one thing I also like to recommend that maybe other people will disagree with me here, but learning a programming language outside of the context of a game engine, because otherwise it kind of becomes difficult to tell what's part of the engine and what's just normal. And people who learn exclusively in a game engine tend to have a hard time drawing that line, as well as I think you kind of just get to spend a lot more time with the fundamentals of programming and less with fiddling with specific components or classes or weird stuff the engine's added on top of that.
I was
Yeah.
able to find most all those just while you were talking and share them in the community chat, but I
Oh,
think there
nice.
was one I missed. In between, yeah, Ben Cloward, the Unreal Engine channel, and Tech Art Aid, there was one more you mentioned, but I think I just couldn't spell it.
Oh, Prismatica Dev, I think, which is specifically for shader tutorials as well as like shaders and some blueprint stuff, I believe. Yeah, it's very, very tech art heavy.
Victoria actually will be. You already are a mentor, like offering some classes, and then you'll soon be sharing your mentorship skills with Sierra Division Academy as well. And anybody who's found Victoria's information really useful or would like to chat with her a bit more, then in the next couple of weeks we'll be posting up the availability for that. And yeah, really excited that you've been able to share so much with us today, and hopefully be able to share so much with many more people kind of moving forward. If uh, you're looking for a great resource, then yeah, Victoria herself can be that for everyone as well.
I guess sign up if you want to learn about, I guess, gosh, I'm trying to phrase what order do I list things? I don't know. I think
All the things.
people like on the artistic side of things, trying to switch slightly more technical, even if it's not all the way to tech art. And are like, hey, I want to learn a little bit of code, a little bit of blueprints, a little bit of shaders, a little bit of like something that kind of gets you to the point of this is the thing I have in mind, but you can't do that with just straight bringing meshes in. I think there's some tech art fundamentals that can be fun to help make that jump.
And now all those links are posted in the community chat. I'm not sure if maybe Stephanie would be able to share those underneath the YouTube video with us too, so we could kind of link to some of those resources that you mentioned, and people can start kind of taking a look at what might interest them in the field of tech art. And I mean, it's so great with YouTube and the way that people are sharing content these days and doing like live streams like this and being able to chat with you, like how much information is out there to start just deciding if this is something they want to get more into, and learn more about for themselves.
The internet contains everything everyone knows about this profession, and I think with most game dev professions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, any closing thoughts from either of you before we start saying goodbye to our friends here on the stage here in Discord? Going once, going twice.
We covered a ton, and I could
Yeah,
keep
it's a
talking
lot.
for forever, but I really just I don't want to go on too long because I know it's late. So
Of
yeah,
course.
thank you so much again.
Just Thanks for joining, everyone. I know we went over here, and there's so many people who are still sticking around for these last few questions. So thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for being able to tune in. And so Victoria being very humble, I think one great resource would be her. And so starting here very soon, you're going to be able to sign up for a mentorship with Victoria herself, which will be an 8-week membership and part of our Sierra Division Academy launch here coming very soon. And so please keep eyes on that. Sign up as soon as you can because I'm confident that her mentorship will fill up. And so I strongly recommend hop in, learn from her. Very, very talented technical artist, and we're very, very happy to have her on the team. So, Victoria, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and now evening and then into your morning to be able to make this happen. I know our community is grateful for it, both that are here live as well as those that are going to watch it on YouTube. And I can't express enough how super excited we are to have you a part of our community as well as our Sierra Division Academy offering, given over 4 years experience already, mentoring, teaching, developing curriculum. I'm confident that you're going to do a great job with our students. So thank you. I appreciate you. As for us here at Sierra Division, that will bring us to a close to another Q&A. This time with Victoria Lyons. We're going to be doing a lot of these here coming in the next couple weeks because we have a lot of fun stuff and a lot of cool people to be able to introduce you to and a lot of fun stuff to be able to announce. And so I'm looking forward to it. And so from everybody, for everybody, thank you so much. If you're looking to stand out from a crowd, that being there's a whole bunch of noise around us, and we're looking to stand out, maybe to create that one instance in which you're the person who catches that spotlight, work with us. And don't make noise, make moments. With Sierra Division, you're looking to advance your career, get the edge. Thank you so much again. We're looking forward to seeing and interacting with you more in the coming weeks. But until then, I appreciate you. Thank you so very much. Victoria, Jacob, always a pleasure. The rest of the Sierra Division crew, Victor, Stephanie, for working behind the scenes. Thank you all so much. And until next time.